Hello, my name is Jack Eschenroeder. I'm a fisheries biologist with FISHBIO, and today I'll be providing a brief overview of an ongoing effort that we've been coordinating in Cambodia, where we're working to establish the first acoustic telemetry network to monitor fish migration in the lower Mekong Basin. I'd like to begin by acknowledging our funders. This project is supported by USAID's Wonders of the Mekong project. And on the ground, we've had a lot of support from many local organizations, in particular Young Eco Ambassadors, or YEA, the Inland Fisheries Research and Development Institute, or IFREDI, which is the research branch of the Cambodian Fisheries Administration. And we've also had a lot of support from provincial cantonments of the Fisheries Administration. In addition, we've been collaboratively working on this project with the Mekong River Commission's Joint Environmental Monitoring, or GEM program, who have been maintaining a similar telemetry network in southern Laos and also releasing tagged fish. So the primary objectives of this effort were to document the transboundary movement of migratory fish, so working with that GEM team to track fish moving from Cambodia to Laos and Laos to Cambodia, as well as to gather data on when and where fish are moving in both the main stem Mekong and important tributaries, particularly the Sekong, Sesan, and Srepok, or 3S rivers, which drain northeastern Cambodia and southern Laos and join the Mekong near the Cambodian city of Stung Treng. And these objectives were developed in the context of current and planned hydropower development in the region. So a number of dams have been completed in recent years, including Lower Sesan 2 in that 3S basin, as well as Don Sahong in the main stem Mekong, right on the Lao border. It's on the Lao side of the national border. And there are a couple of dams that are planned to be built soon, in particular one in the Upper Sekong, for which construction is imminent or may have even started already, and potential dams in the main stem Mekong near the cities of Sambor and Stung Treng in Cambodia. So right off the bat, there are a lot of logistical considerations and challenges. As you can see by this photo, the Mekong is a pretty challenging system for acoustic telemetry. There's a lot of braided channels, a lot of obstructions in the channels, and it can be challenging to find areas that are suitable where you can get full coverage of the breadth of the river. So one of the first steps we had to take was identifying suitable sites. We also had to debate between floating versus sunken receivers, deciding whether to mount them on floating platforms or sinking them to the bottom of the river and recovering them at the end of the project. We had to contend with wildly fluctuating flows. Between wet and dry season, water level can shift more than 10 meters, so pretty dramatic changes season to season. We had to consider preventing theft and vandalism and ongoing maintenance and data downloads, because a lot of these areas are fairly remote and they're not places we can get out to super frequently to make sure things are in good shape and being downloaded. So the answer to all of these issues that we settled on pretty quickly was having a really community-supported and community-driven approach. So basically the first step we took was working with that local organization, Young Eco Ambassadors, to really spend a lot of effort and time building a community network of villages throughout the main stem Mekong and those 3S rivers, and then using that network to support our installation and the maintenance of our receivers, and also leveraging their knowledge of these systems to really make sure that we were doing the best we could to choose good locations. This network also allows for really rapid communication of any issues that might arise and improves the likelihood of recapture reporting. So all of our tagged fish also have external tags, and having more people aware of the project and what it is really increases the odds that those will be reported if they're captured. So in June of 2022, we deployed our receiver network. As you can see, we settled on the floating platform approach, which I'll talk about a bit more in a while. But we worked with local communities to build these platforms just with materials available locally, and use their knowledge to kind of find locations and come up with the design that they thought would work best. We deployed a total of 39 receivers across 14 sites. We've since expanded that by one site. But this receiver network covers about 284 river kilometers in the main stem Mekong, and that ranges from the border with Laos all the way south to the Cambodian city of Kampong Cham. And it covers additionally 96 river kilometers in the 3S basin, in particular in the Sekong and Sesan rivers. So again, most of the receivers are mounted to these floating platforms, but where possible, we also did mount them to docks, floating homes, and even a floating restaurant in one case. So this is an overview of the network. It's kind of a large area, so it's a bit challenging to see all of it in one picture, but generally you can see that we focused really heavily on the confluence area, so where those 3S rivers meet the main stem Mekong, and on the national boundary area, or the national border area. So because those areas are of interest for tracking which channels fish are using, we really wired those heavily. Particularly in the border, there's interest in trying to understand if fish are able to use alternative channels to move around the Don Sahong Dam barrier. That dam blocked what was presumed to be the main migratory corridor, and there's a really large series of waterfalls adjacent to that called Cone Falls. It's actually the widest waterfall in the world, and there was some uncertainty of how fish might be moving through this area now that there's a large barrier. You can also see the sites of the proposed main stem dams in the cities of Stung Treng and Sambor in Cambodia. So our network covers areas on either side of those to allow us to see if fish are moving through where these dams would be built. And recently, this same region of the river in Cambodia was designated for, or proposed for designation as a World Heritage Site. So the region kind of stands at a critical decision point now between conserving these habitats and the fisheries they provide versus developing hydropower. And we're hoping that some of the data we're collecting with this project can help inform those decisions. So this is a little bit larger image of that confluence and border area. And again, as you can see, these areas were wired pretty heavily, so we would have good resolution on where fish are moving. Notably, in the Lao area of the network, the GEM team decided to sink their receivers to the bottom. A large part of that was because of the Cone Fall area. There's some pretty high flows, some pretty intense water movement, so they were a little more limited with trying to have floating platforms there. So it's the wet season now, and almost every day I wake up to messages in our Telegram group of local communities doing things like this, removing debris that's accumulated on the receiver platforms near their villages, or pulling barrels closer to shore because flows are coming up, or just generally maintaining the platforms through these challenging conditions. And we found that these communities have really taken ownership of the platforms located near their villages and are really, really working hard to make sure they're maintained. So it's really been instrumental for dealing with what are very challenging field conditions. Another way that communities have been really critical is by providing us fish to tag. So we're tagging and releasing wild-caught fish for this project, and we've done that through the help from local fishers. So we found very quickly that the availability of suitable fish for tagging depends on season and location, but again, leveraging that local ecological knowledge and working with local fishers, we were able to tell them what species we were interested in, what sizes we're interested in. Generally, they're able to tell us where those can be found. So we focused really largely on highly migratory species that are important to local fisheries, and also species of conservation concern, like this critically endangered Probarbus julieni. So on the ground for the tagging, we've really let young eco-ambassadors and iFreddy take the lead on this, and they've done an incredible job. They're supported by local fisheries administration staff and villagers, but they've really taken a lead in executing all of this on the ground. So there was some trial and error in developing methods. Part of that was finding fisher gears that were able to provide healthy fish, which we found hook and line and floating gill net. Generally, fish were in good condition if they were captured by those. We had to find suitable locations to set up net pens and tagging stations. We had to develop means of transporting fish from where they were caught to the tagging location. We had to develop best practices for holding time, making sure fish had time to recover before being released, and also find release locations where they wouldn't be recaptured immediately in gill nets or otherwise not detected. So generally, we tried to release them near our monitoring stations so we could get that initial location on the fish. So to date, our Wonders of the Mekong field team has tagged a total of 321 fish representing 23 distinct species. An additional 139 fish were tagged and released by the GEM team in Laos. They're no longer tagging fish, but many of those tagged fish are still in the system and still being monitored by our network. So in total, between the two projects, we've tagged 28 different species, most of which are highly migratory and important to local fisheries. However, the very first fish that the Wonders team tagged was also the largest fish that we tagged, and that was this giant freshwater stingray that weighed a total of 300 kilograms or 661 pounds. So this is kind of a testament to the value of that community network. While we were deploying our receiver network in June of 2022, some members of our network from a nearby village let us know that fishers there had captured a really remarkably large giant freshwater stingray, and we were able to quickly get out there and subdermally implant an acoustic tag in her. And we've been monitoring her for about the past 14 months and learning a lot about her habitat use, her movement behavior. And we recently published a short communication on that initial data, as well as some of the other initial findings of this project in the journal Water. So some other initial findings: we've tracked fish moving nearly 100 kilometers, sometimes really rapidly. We've seen fish move more than 50 kilometers in less than 3 days, and upstream too, which is pretty amazing. The GEM team in Laos has also tracked fish moving through the Cone Falls area up in the upstream direction. So that's providing insight that at least some of these species are able to migrate through those intense rapid areas. In Cambodia, we've also tracked at least 42 individuals moving through the sites of those proposed main stem megadams, so suggesting that the construction of those dams could be blocking important migratory pathways for a lot of different species. We've also, now that we have more fish tagged at the beginning of this wet season, we've started seeing movement into the 3S basin, so fish moving from as far up as the border up into the Sekong and Sesan rivers. And finally, we've been able to track the movement of endangered and critically endangered species, such as this giant barb shown here. And we're learning a lot about when and where they're moving throughout the watershed as well. So we've learned a lot in this project. Just trying to understand how best to do this kind of telemetry work in the Mekong has definitely been a very steep learning curve, but I think we've done remarkably well, and largely with the support of those communities. We've found very quickly that there's a lot of variability between wet and dry seasons, obviously, in an area where you have such a dramatic shift in habitat and water level. And we found that both submerged and floating receivers are feasible. As I said, that GEM team did use the sunken option, but with our community-focused approach, having visible floating receivers made the most sense. And coincidentally, or I guess not coincidentally, but because of that, we have in Cambodia had basically zero issues with vandalism or theft, whereas in Laos, the GEM team dealt with that quite a bit. So even though they had sunken receivers, they had a lot of problems with people cutting the anchor lines or taking those. So kind of, again, a testament to the value of this community-driven approach is by taking the time to work with them and educate them on this project, it's resulted in very little problems with local communities damaging equipment. In addition, this network has been kind of an opportunity for some other learning or research in the system. So having these platforms out is a kind of a unique opportunity in the Mekong to do some interesting things. And we've worked with some academic institutions and conservation organizations to deploy water quality loggers on some of these platforms in the 3S and mainstem Mekong, and also to track reintroduced Siamese crocodiles in northeastern Cambodia, which have also been implanted with these acoustic telemetry tags. So plans for the next year: we're going to be tagging additional fish during the upcoming dry season and maintaining the network through at least October of next year. And we're also going to be working with the MRC GEM team to analyze our data and try to develop some joint publications and reports that will hopefully, again, be useful for informing decision making for this region. So thank you very much for your attention. If you have any additional questions about this project, please feel free to email me directly. My email's here, or visit our website for more details, more information on this specific project. You can visit bit.ly/Mekong-telemetry or scan the QR code. Thank you very much.